If you owned Netflix stock, or if you are willing to buy, or to, you're contemplating the idea of doing something or putting your money into Netflix based on the price action we saw today after the release earnings, showing that there is a slow into the growth because they lost for the first time in 10 years 200,000 subscribers. So let me share with you my opinion on whether or not you should buy, or maybe if it's time to sell, or should you wait. All right. So looking at the earnings, it's everywhere. Earnings are bad. Earnings for the first time in 10 years show that maybe the business model of Netflix is not that efficient, at least compared to some of the other platforms. Because if you look at the history, if you look at the origins of Netflix, since 2000 and what, 12, when things really started, heating up, well, that was a great period, all right? It was a startup, and it made sense then to be very bullish on Netflix. But 2020 came and gave them a huge boost, all right? Now, in 2022, as we are heading out of this pandemic, well, for some people, it makes sense to kind of shift away from what made sense back then, having a Netflix account, a Disney account, an Amazon Prime account, because nobody was going anywhere. Now people want to travel. People want to discover, see families they haven't seen in 2 years. People want to take road trips. People want to do stuff that will give them the impression that they are living a life they used to live before the pandemic. All right? Now, that being said, if you also look at something else, if you look at the price action from Netflix for the last year, from the run up it had all the way to November, when it was at the peak on the share price, right? It was around $700. Well, since then, it has been declining. Since then, it has been on the way down. Even here, when the market had a tantrum in January, because interest rate and everybody had, all eyes on inflation, it dipped. Yeah, it recovered as the entire market and other peers. But even since then, before earnings, it was still on the downtrend. So something that felt cheap then, it's feeling even cheaper now. If you think you bought here around, 359, yeah, it was cheap compared to 600, and 600 was also cheap compared to 700. But if you were here at 30, and now it's at 226, it also feels cheap. But I don't think it makes sense, at least, to buy this stock now, because the market, it's already puking on Netflix. If you look at every mainstream media, they're talking about Netflix slowing down. And whenever you have slowing down growth in a company, that is not good, especially in an environment where everybody will try to stay away from tech stocks, where we have interest rates increasing, because anytime interest rate increase, that is not bad for companies like this one, right? So there were already a pressure on companies from the NASDAQ, which Netflix is one. But in addition to this, there is already another pressure coming from the organic growth of the company, which is clearly showing signs of a slowdown. So using this perspective, I would say it makes sense to stay out. So don't buy. So now, does it make sense to wait? I will say probably, if you want to be a long-term investor and kind of see how it plays out, because I think people within Netflix are going to find a way to challenge, or to turn things around, and it's going to take a little bit of time. All right. Right now, I don't see how it may happen, but I would love to see that happen. But until then, I think it will take time. And until that time comes, people are going to continue to dump, this stock. Now, does it make sense to sell then if you're already into it? I will say, well, it depends on what were your conviction and what was your strategy to begin with. All right. So if you are sitting on a little bit of profits here on this stock because you think Netflix is a game changer, and it was a game changer, it's just that it had an extra boost from the pandemic, and now the reality is just catching up with it. So I will say, if I was in your shoes, I will probably, at least trim my position or completely get out to make sure I can still preserve a little bit of gains I still have. Otherwise, I will just wait a little bit and see when it's the right time, at least to see a strong, viable entry point. But as of now, to be honest with you, I don't really see it. And that's why I will stay just away from Netflix for the foreseeable future. I may be wrong though, because nobody knows the future, but that's where I see it now.